and see, okay, what helps or hinders new uses or what transformation can take place after abandonment. So I've looked at what happens in this auction that state law requires after tax foreclosure. And I looked at the Wayne County auction and the Genesee County auction because the Wayne County handling of this is considered badly done. I mean, just sort of on the street view. The Genesee County handling of it has had wonderful public relations and is generally thought nationwide to do this well. So what happens after those auctions? And if you look at this, I want you to look particularly at the orangish color, if you can make it out, and the blue color. So just, oops, sorry, little slivers here and here. Those are the properties that became part of a new development or became incorporated into an adjacent homeowner's property. So what I think of as the kinds of new uses, they're new uses that are where someone has a commitment to making something of it, as opposed to, for instance, moving on to be vacant, going into the process as vacant land, coming out as vacant land without any particular use. Usually people holding the property thinking something's going to come along better, but within 2 years often stop paying their taxes again and it's abandoned again. So what happens is that in auctions, 37, in both Detroit and Flint, 37% or 42% of the auction properties ended up as vacant land with no evident use after the auction. And that was close to 80% of the vacant land sold at the auction in both cases. So there are issues about the way the auctions run that I would argue make it very hard for someone who wants to have a garden, or someone who wants to acquire the lot behind them, or who wants to buy a property with a house on it to live in. The rules associated with auctions make it very difficult. Also, the auction doesn't really allow for measured purchase. For instance, you can't see what you're buying, you don't know its environmental conditions and things like that. So it narrows down the possible purchasers, and it deters future positive use. So looking at this in another way, if we look at the Detroit auctioned property compared to property sold by the Detroit city government from its large inventory, an often maligned system, but look, it has done so much better on enabling these positive reuses. So this is a process, while opaque and difficult, has enabled people to figure out whether they do want to buy that house, and then more homeowners have been able to purchase properties, and more people have been able to buy side lots to add to their homes. So then if we look at the Flint auctioned properties in comparison to the Genesee County Land Bank sales, we see something similar, which is that, again, many more people are able to buy an adjacent lot to expand the property they own. And so, again, with different rules and different procedures governing this sale after abandonment, you come out with different outcomes in the same market conditions. The easy answer is always it's the market, stupid, you know, and it's just actually not. And we planners are always happy when that's the case. So then looking at Detroit compared to Cleveland, we see some major differences. As I said, Detroit's system of land sale has not been positively considered, but Cleveland's, I was actually amazed when I went to Cleveland and saw what was happening, and then saw the same exact market conditions, but the outcomes after abandonment are so different. So what can we learn from that? And if you see here, these are properties that were sold by, on the left, the Detroit land, from the Detroit land inventory, and on the right, from Cleveland's land inventory. And you can see that looking here, like Joy shifted colors on you, but here's the percent of the sold properties that became part of a new development project, but Cleveland's was a much higher percent. If you look at the percents incorporated with the adjacent homeowners' property, here about a quarter, here about a quarter, about the same. But the biggest difference is that in Cleveland, something enabled people to reuse property for development, which didn't happen in Detroit, under the same market conditions. So this is the most striking difference in the development, which is that in Detroit, 2% of the properties sold went into affordable housing development. In Cleveland, 45% of the properties were used that way. So again, there's some kind of policy or institutions or something that enables that to happen differently. So I've looked further at what is it? What can we learn from this? And so looked at, well, the folks who develop this property are nonprofit developers. In cities with such weak markets, in neighborhoods where it had been abandoned, the developers are nonprofit developers who right now are under particular siege because of the mortgage foreclosure crisis and the restriction of credit. But I think that although their role needs to change right now, they will in the future also be the only developers interested in much of anything in these neighborhoods that have experienced abandonment. So their role is particularly important to understand in thinking about what do cities become or what can they become. So in Cleveland, nonprofits have been able to buy substantially more property than in Detroit from city sources, so that abandoned property. So in Cleveland, they bought more, as you can see here, but then the more striking thing is that when you compare it, Cleveland's a much smaller city, about half the number of properties, half the population of Detroit. So when you look at it this in comparison to the number of properties and the population, you can see that the Clevelanders bought about 3 times as many properties in relation to their size as the Detroit nonprofits did. In addition, this number down here shows that the Detroit nonprofits purchased property and then failed to reuse it much more than the Cleveland folks did. So there were factors enabling them to be more successful in Cleveland in reusing in the ways they intended to. So what was that? And so I could talk another hour on this topic, but I won't. So this is a very quick summary, and it is that if we look at the community development system as a whole, we see in Cleveland very, very strong political support for nonprofit developers working in neighborhoods to provide decent housing. There's a very strong, close relationship with the city council. There's the mayors for the last few mayors have declared this as a central agenda item in their platforms. In response, the city departments line up to advance the mayor's agenda and the city council's agenda so that they are cooperative and helpful in enabling nonprofit developers to get the right permits and approvals and so forth. In addition, I'll skip to just working relationships. In Cleveland, they're remarkably cooperative with each other. They tend to move back and forth between, say, a nonprofit, the city's community development department, an intermediary, a foundation that funds community development. So they say, we kind of know what the other guy is up against, and we understand. And so we're not bad-mouthing each other. I could not find newspaper articles in the Cleveland Plain Dealer where anyone bad-mouthed someone else